All right, welcome back to the shop. I am here sitting down because I have a lot to talk about. As a lot of you know, I'm on this journey to have a build project that is just one of the massive projects that the most massive project that I've ever done. It involves, of course, the Saito radial engine. Now I'm going to start off by saying this is going to be a video where you do get to hear the engine run. I'm going to walk you through the initial startup that I did, as well as I've done some additional runs, but also recorded with some better quality audio equipment so that you can actually hear the engine. So I want to start off by going over the entire engine stand and what I've done here and lessons that I've learned. So first and foremost, the engine stand that I built a while back, it's sufficient for this engine. It works really, really well. The stakes that I have for the feet, not sufficient for this particular engine. There's just way too much thrust. And so in the videos, you'll see there's a ratchet strap that goes over top of the sawhorse here. And then there are augured stakes in the ground that help secure it to the ground. It's not going anywhere. I tried leveraging, pulling my whole body on this thing, and it's not going anywhere. So I feel safe with that. So yeah, make sure that your engine stand is well secured. So the next thing I really want to talk about is some of the things I had to do to get this ready. So first and foremost, I had to, in addition to mounting the engine and everything together that you've seen previously, I had to install additional systems. So I first installed the ignition system, which is here. It's just cable tied on here, and I've got a piece of foam rubber to help avoid a lot of the vibration, so it's not directly on the wood on the sawhorse. And then each of the spark plugs was installed per the directions in the manual. So follow the manual. Instructions are very important, right? I've got my digital tachometer here. That's hooked up. Made sure that was functioning as well. And that involves connecting to a battery, which leads me to the next segment here. I've got two different batteries on the stand. One is a 3-cell lithium iron phosphate battery. It's like a receiver battery. And then I've got this other battery, nickel metal hydride battery, 4-cell. Well, what's the difference between the two? Really, it's just voltage. It comes down to voltage. So what you'll see initially is starting off with a fully charged battery, and then there's voltage sag, obviously, as it gets used and as there's more load. Now, to be fair, these ignition systems don't draw that much current, but what I failed to observe and take into account is right here on the box it says 6 to 12 volts DC. This will barely get me 6 volts and sustain it, all right? Nominally 4-cell, 4.8 volts, right? So at some point I started to notice that there were misfires on the engine, and it wasn't getting full RPM, and so I stopped, I put it away instead of force it or breaking anything to shut the engine down. And that is when I had the realization that I needed a higher voltage battery. So that is why I have the 3-cell lithium battery, which gets me to where I need to be. Once charged, I'm not even going to get to that 12 volt, right? So making sure that you have the proper voltage is important, all right? Now the misfires, they're not going to damage the engine. It's just you have one cylinder that isn't sparking, or maybe 2 cylinders that aren't sparking. And so it's just the lubrication and the fuel that's going through, and it's not being burned. So you're down on power. You're not going to get any major impact here. Okay. In addition to that, we've got a fuel system I had to work out. I've got obviously the fuel supply. I'm using Tygon tubing from Dubro going to the carburetor, and then I've got a fill tube. There are 2 clunks in the tank. I'm using a gasoline safe stopper, and then I've got a vent tube. I always make sure that I have a vent tube on my gasoline systems. I don't technically need it for the engine stand, but what this comes really handy for is because there's no pressure from an exhaust to the tank, you don't need it, number one. but if you start drawing fuel from the tank, it's going to create suction. So making sure that you have a vent so that you're not creating that suction event, it's helpful. And not to mention all the line priming, because this is going to be a way longer line than when installed on the plane. It allows me to blow on the tube into the tank and prime the line that goes all the way to the carburetor. Shouldn't need that. Should be able to prime just fine just by spinning the prop over when it's installed on the plane, but makes this job a little bit easier in that regard. So vent line, important. The other thing that I haven't covered in the previous video is the propeller. The propeller is a Falcon 22 by 10. It's the S3-22 by 10 prop. Just a pretty generic prop. It's silver, so you know I could paint it up and put it on something else if eventually I need this prop for another application, rather than just going with plain wood. It's a nice profile, but 2210 is the specified prop for break-in by Saito, so definitely recommend there. For the lubrication, so the crankcase on break-in, I did put in the 30 cc's of break-in oil. I used Valvoline gear oil that has like zinc and phosphorus content and all that. Pretty much any oil, I've been told by multiple people, pretty much any oil, engine oil, gear oil, as long as it's brand new oil and it's lubricating, then it should be fine. And of course, I've got the vent that comes out the bottom of the crankcase. Oh, right here. So make sure that that is left open, but this part gets plugged once you add the oil. And you're supposed to lubricate that, you know, if the engine sits for a long time. So making sure that all the valve train and other internals stay well lubricated. The finicky bits, getting the throttle, it's obviously, I don't know where the throttle position needs to be first time starting up. So playing around with throttle position wasn't exactly first on my mind, so I ended up flipping a lot. You'll see that in the video, but it's better to play it safe. I'd rather start on a slow rotation rather than open it up all the way and start at full throttle. So bear with that, be patient. I really don't have much more to say. It's a very reliable, robust system. I've already gotten, I would say, almost a liter. I need to put a full liter of fuel into the engine to break it in, playing with the throttle, or sorry, the adjustment needle. Run it, rich in it to cool it off, set it back, rich in it, set it back, do those kinds of things, and it says for a liter. I think I'm almost halfway there. I need to check. But it's really important to get the right mix. And speaking of mix, let me go get some. All right, well, while I'm going to get that, I'm just going to walk you through this first video. This is the first time I started up the engine, and so yeah, like there's just a lot of unknowns here. So I'm setting the the throttle right. I've got everything powered up, and I'm just flipping through. I'm pretty much assuming that it's not going to fire, but I'm backing off just in case because I'm trying to be safe. Trying to essentially get the carburetor primed, even though I primed the line with fuel. So at this point, I'm wondering a little bit why it's not at least bucking, figuring that it's choked. And so I go through a number of times flipping through this, hoping to hear something. All right, so now I'm like, okay, well, clearly something has to change. I've got fuel, but I'm not getting anything firing off. Okay, now I'm just being stubborn. Let's make this easier on myself. It's time to adjust the throttle lever. Maybe down throttle is
a little bit higher than I expect. Set the throttle a little higher. Yeah, there's your problem. So now that the engine is running, the objective is to get it to a stable place and let the engine warm up. That's what the break-in instructions say. Keep in mind that I'm not using any special sound recording equipment here, so everything is already being clipped and cut off. And as throttle increases, it's just going to clip it more, so the sound quality isn't great here. But there are a couple of things that I do, adjusting needle and stuff like that, just mostly trying to get heat in the engine. It's a pretty cold day, it's only about 40 degrees outside, and so getting heat in the engine takes a little bit longer than the time allotted that they specify in the manual. Alright, so with some heat in the engine, we can now get into the break-in period. So that's really the objective here, is to start the break-in. There's a procedure to it. You can reference the manual if you're really interested in what Saito recommends, but I'm just trying to follow the manual here, doing the best that I can, trying to be safe. Again, big spinny blade of death, but I'll just shut up, let you enjoy the sound, but also note that it's running very, very rich with a very high oil content, and so there's going to be a lot of smoke, a lot of stuff coming out the pipes, so just enjoy the sights and sounds. So the two things that I additionally haven't talked about yet, which oil I'm using the Deluxe Materials Power Model 2T-S. It's full synthetic gasoline additive, and it's 500 mil. You buy it in a 500 mil thing. It's two-stroke oil. It's essentially what this is a two-stroke engine, but it operates in four-stroke. But yeah, anyway, this is the lubrication that lots of people in Europe that fly with these engines use this. A good friend of mine who flies powered paragliders uses this on his engine. And if he trusts it to not wear on his engine that he relies on for his life, I think it's pretty safe to trust on this model. So there you go. The disadvantage is the dispenser. I don't like this. It's nice because it has these little faint graduations, but I really don't trust them. And so in addition to that, I purchased my own glass graduated cylinder. And this is going to be far more accurate than those, I'm convinced. I'm a scientist. Again, using graduated cylinders is kind of my jam. Got a cup over it for keeping dust and debris out, but I measured what I needed. What's nice on the back of the bottle is that it tells you like which ratio of oil you're going to target and exactly how much for either a quart or a gallon, however much you're mixing up. So I have a 1 gallon jug, and the break-in is a 15-to-1 ratio, so I needed to measure 252 milliliters, so roughly half of this bottle. There's my 250, and it's in levels of 5 ml graduations. So looking at your meniscus, go a little bit above 250, and roughly halfway in between, you're good. So it's got enough graduation in the resolution to get me where I need to be. And it's glass. I don't have to worry about any petroleum product or compatibility issues. And so after measurement, I pour into the jug, swashed it around, pumped some back in here to recover any residual on the edges of the glass. And so there's just a little bit of blue residue left from dispensing the oil. Just be mindful that it is glass. It will break, and this is not tempered glass. So when it breaks, it's going to shatter. So be careful with it. All right. They do make plastic grads that are safe for use in petroleum products, but I'm familiar with glass and I know how to handle it, and so that's what was more comfortable for me. So if you're willing to pay for the extra to have a plastic one, that's great. All right, so now you can see that I've been running the engine. There's soot and fuel tank is lower, different day. I've set up for a better sound recording, so this is pure just for listening pleasure. All right, so not much more to say. I think it's pretty self-explanatory that this engine sounds amazing. I don't think that it needs an exhaust ring, a collector ring. I think that would be handy to collect all the exhaust and send it out one hole, and that way I can simplify the exhaust routing. But I do like the sound a lot already with the individual pipes, the individual headers. I think it's a very raw sound that is very fitting for the engine and the model that I think will work well together. I honestly don't think that this is outside of anything particularly special. Having dealt with DLE engines and a Quadra engine and other gasoline and glow engines. I don't think this is anything other than a bigger jigsaw puzzle, as it were. There's a lot more pieces, a lot more parts, but if you go through methodically, it's really not that intimidating. But I will say that there is a learning curve, all right? Make sure you're doing your homework and you're following instructions and you're listening to smart people. And by smart people, I mean people that will give you real data value added suggestions, not necessarily an opinion. Everybody's got an opinion. Everybody's got holes in their nose. Doesn't make it a pleasant place to be, all right? So listen to people with opinions, because heaven knows the last video that I posted, I had opinions coming at me left and right. And I appreciate it. You guys want to contribute, want to chip in. But honestly, a lot of the opinions were just that. They were not helpful. So unless you have data to provide to me, I'll consider your thought, but I don't think that it will be as worth listening to unless you can justify it with data. Just saying. Know your audience, okay? Your audience, if you're going to suggest something to me, make sure you're going to back up what you say with actionable data. And I have a lot of good friends that understand that because they know me, they know how my brain works, and I'm going to do something cautiously, and I will only try it if I know that there is a real data-driven idea behind that suggestion. So, that said, keep the comments civil. I appreciate that there's a lot of excitement around this project. And I'm excited to have everyone on the journey here. And so please continue to follow along. Head on over to dubro.com for your hardware needs. This project will certainly use a lot of them. I'm already using a number of screws and clevis connectors and push rods, and there's Dubro hardware in just this setup already, Dubro tank. So be mindful that a lot of the things that you need to complete your projects are going to be found there. Use code JOSH10 to get a 10% discount there. I care about you guys saving a little bit of money, and those made in USA products are worth all of your hard-earned dollars. So head on over there and get what you need. Until next time, I've got another project that I'm still working on. The pea shooter will be returning next week for an update there, so look forward to that. And until next time, keep exploring your flying works of art.